In this video, I'm sharing a complete weekly checklist that you can follow to keep your trees healthy, progressing, and looking amazing. The truth about bonsai is it's small, consistent actions that add up to progress over time. It's just like exercising or saving money. Doing a little bit every week might not feel like much, but over weeks and months, you can make massive progress. And with bonsai, if you're not making progress, your trees are going to start falling behind. Like this one here. I'll be honest, this thing is a complete mess, but I'm going to run through my weekly maintenance checklist with you on this tree so we can start to move it forward. Hi, if you're new here, I'm David and I've been doing bonsai for a decade. So let me show you how my simple weekly habits can make a difference to your bonsai. Okay, so let's dive into this checklist. I've broken these tasks down into really small, manageable chunks that you should check on each of your trees every week or every 2 weeks if you don't have the time. You won't need any complicated tools or know-how. Everything you need is in this video. Each step focuses on a key part of the bonsai's health, from soil and wiring to growth and pests. I recommend watching this video with the bonsai right in front of you. You can pause after I've explained each step, do it on your own tree, and that way you'll get the most out of this routine and you can continue to use it to keep your trees progressing through the year. So grab a bonsai and let's get started. Right, step one is the soil check. Start by looking closely at the surface of the soil. Are there any weeds growing there that you need to remove? Clearly, there's a lot here. Weeds compete with your bonsai for nutrients and water, and some can also grow a really fine root system, which can prevent proper water flow through the bonsai pot. So it's important to remove them as soon as you spot them to stop them getting established. Next, you want to check the moss top layer on your soil. I like to apply a moss top dressing to my bonsai trees when I repot them because I like the benefits that brings to the tree. Moss protects the top layer of soil from damage from rain and the elements to stop it breaking down prematurely, and it can help to distribute water throughout the pot more evenly by drawing water up from the bottom of the pot to the top. And I also really like the way it looks, which when it comes down to it, that's what bonsai is all about, right? The trouble is sometimes beasties, particularly birds, will come and take moss and put them in their nests, and that can leave bare patches. So when that happens, I usually reapply a bit of top dressing to help reestablish the moss in that area. Now, once you've checked the moss, you should take a peek underneath to see what the quality of the soil is like. Over time, soil in a bonsai pot is naturally going to break down and become finer and finer until it turns to grit or dust. And when that happens, it increases the surface area of the soil particle. What that ultimately leads to is holding on to more water. And so when that happens in your bonsai tree, they stay wetter. That can prevent new root growth and it can damage the health of your tree. So that's a sign that your tree is going to need repotted. Another thing to look out for is the root ball being really solid and compacted. When it becomes totally full of roots, it can stop water flowing through the pot. And that's another sign that your tree is going to need a repot in the near future. Now, 3/4 of the year when you're making these checks, it's not going to be repotting season. We only really want to repot our trees in spring. Once they're coming out of winter dormancy and they're starting to wake up and grow, that's the perfect time to be doing root work. So if you see any of these indicators that your tree needs a repot, make a note of it for next repotting season and make sure you adjust your watering accordingly. Now, when it comes to removing these weeds, generally the best tool are your fingers. You can just pull them out and you'll get most of the roots. Now, I do prefer to use my fingers to get most weeds out of trees, but there is also the option to use a pair of tweezers, which I do for very, very small weeds like this one. When you get down to teeny tiny ones, it can help to be a bit more precise and not disturb the moss so much when you're pulling the weeds out, but they're dreadfully slow. If I was to use just these tweezers to do all of that tree, that would take bloody forever, so usually I use my fingers and I'll get these out if I absolutely need to. Now, with the growth of all those weeds and that grass and stuff, we do have some bare patches on the moss now. I don't think I really need to top dress this. I think we've got enough scattered moss around that this is going to cover over quite nicely by itself. But the fact that it's bare helps us look at the soil beneath. So we can see here we do have some quite big intact particles of soil. There's a lot of root growth on the surface and there's some broken down akadama, but there's nothing in here that's going to be impeding the drainage of this tree in the near future. Yeah, I think we should be good for another at least year in this pot, if not more, for this tree. Now, the next thing on the checklist is really important, and we'll get to that in a second, but I do want to address the fact that I've got this horribly misshapen, neglected tree here. This is a tree that I bought really early in my bonsai career. It was just a regular Christmas tree that I got from B&Q. If you don't know it, it's a hardware store. I basically abused this thing over the years to try different techniques. I did some basic bonsai styling with it. I've tried a trunk split on it here. It suffered from a really bad infestation to the extent that I gave up on it. I thought, this tree's gone. There's no point in it anymore. And I just chucked it into the corner of the garden. And miraculously, it survived and came back to life. Since then, I paid more attention to it because I think it deserves my respect for surviving my abuse and neglect. So it's unstyled. It's got some wire on from, I don't know what I was doing with it, but I want to progress this thing over the next few years to try and make it something interesting, because all of that abuse that I put on it, we can turn that into some nice character for the tree. Now, the next step in our checklist is to check the wire on your bonsai. Wiring is one of the most important techniques we have for shaping a bonsai tree, but it can also be one of the most damaging if it's not done right. So each week I like to inspect any wire that I've got on my bonsai trees. Clearly, as the bonsai grows and branches thicken, wire is going to start digging into the branch. And this wire bite can start to form grooves and scars on branches. Now, there's a bit of nuance here, and I've got a whole video on when to unwire trees to prevent scarring. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. But to briefly cover it here, you want to split your trees into two camps, thin bark and thick bark. And for thin bark trees, if you get wire bite marks, those trees are really going to struggle to get rid of that visible scar. And so for those trees, you don't want to allow wire bite to happen. And when you start to see wire getting tight on a branch, you want to remove it. It means you're going to have to reapply wire quite a few times to get the eventual desired shape for that branch. But if you have something like a Japanese maple that you want to keep scar free, then it's worth the effort. For bonsai that are thick bark, you can leave them and you want to let the wire bite in and scar a bit, because what that means is the branch has grown enough new tissue in its new position that when you remove the wire, it's going to stay there and not rebound back. And because they're thick bark, they can grow bark over those scars really quickly and hide those marks. There's a spectrum of bark thickness and flakiness and all the rest of it. And so for each of your trees that you've got to work out how willing you are to risk a scar and how much effort you want to invest in rewiring. But when it comes down to it, you need to check your trees regularly to be informed on the state of the wire so you can make those correct decisions. So that's what you should do every week. Now, we've got wire on this branch, and I don't have a plan at the moment for this tree and what it's going to look like. So this should be coming off anyways, but you can hopefully see here there's some buttressing of the bark against the wire. So I know that the wire is biting in there. And this is a relatively thick bark tree, so I'm not too worried about that for the aesthetics of the branch. But because I don't know what I want to do with this tree, I am going to take this wire off because it's serving no purpose. Step 3 is our growth check. And this is going to tell you a lot about your bonsai's health and give you a chance to respond to what the tree's doing. You want to look at your tree closely and see, is it growing new shoots, leaves, or needles? If you have strong and consistent growth across the entirety of your tree, then that's a really good sign that your bonsai is happy with its conditions: water, nutrients, sunlight, etc. If your tree isn't growing, or if the growth is quite weak, then that's a cue for you to investigate. It might be stress from weather, poor soil, could be underwater, not getting enough light, and it's your job to be a bit of a detective to try and figure out what could be causing the weak growth in your bonsai. You also want to check if the growth is even across the tree, because if there's weak growth in one particular area, if you value a branch that's growing weakly, you need to do something about that so you don't lose that branch. And that might be holding back growth in the stronger areas more aggressively to let the weaker area catch up and reinvigorate. Now, a big part of assessing new growth is, has that growth hardened off? Now, trees, when they grow, their shoots are usually soft and fleshy, and they're really vibrant green when they first start growing. And at this stage, the tree is still actively investing its energy into growing that shoot. Trees have a store of sugars, which is their energy battery, and they burn those sugars to create this new growth. Now, if you prune at this stage when the growth is still soft and fleshy, you're essentially taking that investment of energy from the tree and throwing it away. Now, that might be something you want to do. You want to be making those prunes with clear knowledge about what stage of growth the tree is at and the clear intention of why you're doing it. More often, you're going to want to wait for that growth to harden off before you prune it. And what we mean by hardening off is the growth is going to look firmer, it's going to be a deeper green, and you'll notice a waxy cuticle covering the foliage. That's a signal that the tree has stopped investing energy in that. Now, at that point, the new leaves or needles are acting as solar panels for the tree and helping the tree to regain energy through photosynthesis. So when you know what stage the growth is at, you can think about your objective for the tree. If you want to build strength or thicken a branch, you probably want to leave that growth alone. If you're trying to maintain shape or develop ramification, then depending on the species of tree you have, you either want to pinch new growth before it's hardened off or prune the new growth after it's hardened off. Now, this tree has actually finished its active growing for the year. We had good even bud growth across the entirety of the tree. It does have weaker growth on this back side because I've not been rotating it, but the new growth has hardened off and there's new bud development on the tips of these branches. So I think it's a sign that this tree is finding its feet with its health again, and it can be worked on from now until the middle of autumn. If you're interested in seeing me work this tree and figuring out what the hell I'm going to do with it, then subscribe to the channel, because then you can get a notification when that video comes out. I'm hoping you found this all useful so far. If you have, maybe you can click the like button because it really helps the channel. Now, the next thing in our checklist is looking for pests. And this is one of the most important habits you can build into a weekly bonsai routine. Now, to check for pests on a bonsai tree, you need to have a really good close-up view of the foliage. You can't usually see them from a distance. You want to really get up close and personal with the leaves. Most pests tend to be really small and sneaky. They're most commonly found on the underside of branches and leaves where they get more shelter. You'll also find them more commonly on new growth. Pests are too deep a topic to go into now, but if you're interested in any videos on any particular ones, then leave a comment and let me know. Now, if you do find pests, then it's really important that you act quickly and treat them as soon as you can. If you find them early, you can handle them with a really light touch and avoid chemicals, which is better for your tree, the microbial environment in the pot, and your garden in general. But if you find them late, I do find that using a chemical pesticide is the best thing to do because it really gets rid of the beasties effectively. And ultimately, when you're investing as much time and energy into a hobby as you need to do with bonsai, it's not really worth it for me to mess around with approaches that might not work. Now, the next thing on this checklist is a really important thing to do for your trees, but I think it's something that people just don't bother with nearly enough. And that is, we want to rotate the tree on the bench. Now, this might seem minor, but it's one of the most effective ways to get even balanced growth across your tree and help make sure that you maintain good growth. It's really common in bonsai to have a tree on a bench with its front facing you, and it's amazing to look at because you put a lot of time and effort into styling that front. But over time, that's going to lead to lopsided growth, particularly if the front that you're looking at isn't necessarily facing the sun all of the time, and you might end up with the back of your bonsai getting stronger growth than the desired front. So try and get in the habit of rotating your bonsai at least every month, but ideally every week or 2 weeks, to make sure it's getting good solid sun exposure on all sides. You can also intentionally choose to not rotate your trees if you have a weaker area that you want to get more sunlight and grow a bit more strongly. So if there's a weak side to your tree, maybe leave it pointing to the sunnier side of your garden for a bit longer until the growth evens up. And then you can go back to rotating your tree more regularly. And that's it. This checklist should take a minute or two per tree if you're doing it very regularly. And ultimately, this consistent approach to bonsai is going to lead to healthier trees, a better connection with your trees, and when you come to style them, you'll know them intimately, so you can really do your best work. If you watch this while you're working on one of your trees, nice one. If you didn't, maybe bring your laptop out to the garden and cue it up, because working through it with a tree, I think, is going to be really helpful. If you think I missed something, let me know in the comments. I'm interested to hear what everyone does on a regular basis with their trees. And if you found this video helpful, then maybe you want to check out this one.